Well, so hello Godfrey, how are you there?
Hello, Alex. I'm well, thank you. And you?
I'm great. Thank you for agreeing to give this interview because I think it's a busy time for you. It is Christmas Eve, New Year. You have a lot of meetings with friends. How are these days for you?
Yes, there are actually lovely weather. Everything is very good. And we're right in the middle of our summer holidays.
Oh.
So the weather is absolutely wonderful.
Great.
So there's been lots of time outdoors.
The same here, but absolutely different type of the weather here. But
Yes.
I enjoy it. All right, so and today we're going to talk about very boring topic. Sorry, it's about education. In this boring field, we work.
Not at all. Not at all.
Not at all.
I don't mind at all.
Great. We have some kind of proverb or saying, everyone knows how to educate and how to cure a patient.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, nobody knows how to educate and nobody knows how to cure a patient correctly. Yes, so we have so many talks about education and hospital system, so endless topic. But I would like to start with a question about your childhood. When you were little, what kind of education did you have in your home when you were little?
When I was a child, we went. My brothers and sister went to a typical government school, and we had a schooling like a typical government school. So we went and had, because in our system, I think in Russia your graduation is grade 11. Is that correct? Is that the last final year for school, high school? Grade 11?
Grade 11, absolutely correct.
Yes.
Good.
We here in South Africa have 12 grades. So we start at obviously grade 8 all the way to grade 12. So it's 12 years, and we call it a matriculation. So when you matriculate, you are at the end of grade 12. So that's basically what we had. We went all the way from grade 1 to 12, over 12 years.
Okay, but probably I would like to hear something about your mom or dad. Did they teach you something? Did you read any books?
Of course.
So how was it when you were so little?
So my dad would also give us lots of books to read. We would go to the libraries, and he would give us extra lessons in the evening, maybe after supper time or something like that. And my uncle also, who lived down the road, would give us extra maths lessons, because I wasn't that great in maths.
Okay.
So I had to have extra lessons so that I could get a good grade by the time I finished grade 12, which I did, which was great. I was very grateful for the extra lessons and the extra time that my family took to educate us.
Nice. So I wasn't the best pupil at school, and I wouldn't say that it was my best part of life. What about you? How did you feel when you went to school?
You know, Alex, I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed just the classroom. I enjoyed always finding new things to learn about. I enjoyed going to school. It was very exciting because every day was a different day. It was never the same. I was very lucky, and I had 2 or 3 teachers that were very inspirational for me.
Which ones? Which subjects?
Well, yes, good question. The one was history. And he was a very eccentric man. And we lived in a very repressed society when I was a child. So a lot of, in the apartheid days, a lot of a lot of things were banned, and you weren't allowed to say certain things about certain government things. And in those days, we're talking 40 years ago, so he was quite brave in that he would allow us to have an open mind and think for ourselves, and not have to always predict what we had to do. And I really appreciated that. He was quite an idealist, and he was always allowing us to think for ourselves, and I think that made a big difference for the pupils as well.
Okay, and two other subjects, you said 3 teachers.
Yes, so English literature was another one. We had English as a subject, but we were also allowed to take English literature, which basically would be a much more higher graded, so we would be studying theatre, we would be studying the history of Shakespeare, we'd be studying British, we'd study Tolstoy, we'd study all kinds of classical literature as well, which wouldn't have been part of the curriculum in an ordinary English curriculum, yes. And then the other one, the third one was, yes, it was our English literature teacher, our English teacher, and our biology teacher. And the biology teacher also, he just made it more exciting. And because we were an all-boys school, it wasn't as embarrassing to learn about the birds and the bees than, say, having a sort of a co-ed school. So he always made it a bit more, it was all a serious subject and everything. And he used to make a bit of light humor about some of the subjects as well, which made it more interesting than just going every day to listen to the same things over and over again.
All right. Look, when you said about literature, about British or English literature, it's probably meant that you had a British type of education, British curriculum at that time. It was
very much so.
It was 100% probably British curriculum, with some exceptions. What do you think?
There were exceptions. Our second national language is Afrikaans. So we had that as a subject as well. So that was also all the way to matric or to grade 12. So Afrikaans was because it was the second most important language in the country, we had to study that full time as well and be graded for that. But you're right. So then obviously with the Afrikaans languages, we had set works for those as well, which were written obviously by Afrikaans authors, indigenous authors, etc. of the country. But mostly British. Absolutely, mostly British.
Mostly British. And in this concern, I would like to ask you one more question about history of our countries, because Russia and South Africa, we passed through a lot of transformations. Bad or good transformations, that's not the questions. But we passed through a lot of changes at our country. And my question, first part of the question, you mentioned apartheid, and
apartheid, yes.
And in this connection, I would like to ask you how much were the school white at your days? And
in my days,
yes.
Yes.
Come on.
Okay, so in my days it was only white. So the whites were allowed to go to school in the white schools, and there were particular townships as well. We never had any black or people of colors neighbors. It was all completely what they called separate development. That was even the term in those days, separate development. So in those days, we never saw any black people unless they were servants or something like that. And if you think that this is in my lifetime, it is quite extraordinary that we have come so far and we have sorted all that out. And today we have mixed schools, mixed race schools, mixed race everything.
Yeah.
So we've come completely through that democracy, and there's no more of that separation, which is absolutely wonderful. But yes, we never saw any black children in our schools, never until matric. Yeah.
Okay.
Only at university. At university, Nelson Mandela was released from prison.
Yeah.
So once he was released by the government,
Good.
they started talking about unionizing
Yeah.
and becoming one government.
Yeah.
And then they started making the restrictions less. And so we started experiencing people of color in our universities, which was absolutely normal. And it was just nice to see that transformation had already been happening while I was a student. And now today it's the norm completely.
Good. And the second part of the question, it's not a question about race, it's not a question about racism, not at all, because Russia, it's a multinational country, and it's probably getting more and more multinational, and probably the same things about South Africa, I don't know. But my question is, speaking positively about this transformation, do you think the standards of information, standards of education slipped down, not up, after changing the curriculum? Because again, it's not a question about racial relations, no way. Because I watched some videos, and probably I can see some decaptivating, or how to say it, the culture in some, the culture is going down in some countries, African countries, I mean. So what about that side? What about that point of view? How did the education change? Because completely the system changed. What do you think?
Yes. Well, you know, it's very interesting you say, because in about 10 days' time, the results of the grade 12 students will be coming out nationally. So we will be able to see in the newspapers, online and everything, how well the grade 12s did when they graduated in December last year, because now their school year is completed.
Good.
Unlike Russia, where it's just like our summer holidays.
Yeah.
So school is finished, it's over, our school year has completed, and now we are expecting those results to come out any day now. And it's an interesting one that you mentioned, because it's manyfold. There are a lot of issues that are contained in it. We have inherited a legacy from those days where black children weren't given the proper education that they were allowed. So now it's taking us this time to come up to that level of education that we should be accustomed to. So poverty is also a big problem.
Okay.
A lot of parents can't afford to send their children to really good schools, or private schools, or any kind of good educational systems. So yes, because of that, the education climate and the education level has somewhat decreased, and is not what we were accustomed to in those days. But I think it sort of evens itself out. But I've found, and this is an interesting development, is that, and I think this has become more prevalent, is that a lot of school leavers, in my time, they would have gone straight to university, and we always studied something which we really felt that once we had that degree, we could go out into the world and you know, find a great job and do it to our best abilities. These days, with the internet and with social media and everything, and all the things you can find on social media channels, there seems to be a bit of a decrease in that need for a degree at a university. A lot of, I think, generation now would feel that they would go straight into the job sector and find a good enough job. I think this is a generation thing as well. So we have found, because of those things that I've mentioned to you, that there are less people going into universities to do the old-fashioned education and degree, and more people going straight into the workforce. So it's going to be interesting to see what the level of the pass rate, so to speak, the pass rate, the average national pass rate will be in a few weeks' time.
All right. Okay. And so step by step. Now, you mentioned a higher education. You mentioned college and university. Probably you know. I can tell you. I'm a person who graduated a university in the USSR, and all the education, including higher education, was free, absolutely free.
Yes.
I didn't pay a single kopeck, a single cent. Okay, and now probably, I don't know the exact numbers, but probably 90% of higher education you have to pay, and you have to pay. Probably it's a positive things or negative things, but it's not the question. The question is that the education became a product which you can sell and you can get money from that. And do you think there's a lot of money to be made in education and it's not very good? That it's not very good because it's a different mentality. It's a product. You have to get more money. You have to organize a net of education. And it's funny. It's funny to say that let's say Cambridge or Oxford would like to have much more money. It's so easy that just to have open a lot of nets, school somebody around the world. It will be a net, it will bring a lot of money, but the standards will go down. So I hope that's a good idea, not to open any sister schools of Cambridge and Oxford everywhere, only because we all love money. So where's the balance? Because where's the balance? What do you think? How it works?
It's a very interesting comment you make there, Alex. We have to find a balance between proper education and the balance between affordable education. And I think that's the most tricky part of where we are right now in the situation. I think that it is not as easy as it was, and I agree with you, as it was, say, 20 years or so ago. But having said that, we have so many more resources available to us that we can withhold that quality of education, because it's up to us to just make that quality attainable, and so that we can keep that quality of education, because it's completely very, very important that we keep that standard the way we are accustomed to, and also to the educators, to the children on the level in the classroom. Absolutely.
Okay, and so everywhere we hear the words, I repeat it, education. I want my children to be educated well. I need good education for my children, and so on and so forth. But what do you think about self-education? And in this concern, what do you think about education online, which is mostly free, but you have to have a self-discipline, or what, if you want to get to be self-educated?
Yes, exactly. You need that discipline. You need to get accustomed to program of doing it specifically according to, you need to be punctual, you need to have that hunger for learning from that material as well. And it's there, it's available, but one has to, as you say, you have to be proactive, you have to make the most of it, and it'll come to you. It'll definitely be available for you. It just takes that discipline and self-motivation, absolutely.
Okay, and just additional question, what do you think of a single-sex education? And do you have single-sex schools in South Africa where you teach only girls and no boys at all? Or
okay, so you have boys' schools and girls' schools separate.
Yeah, separate.
It's not as popular as it used to be. It seems to be a very old-fashioned way of teaching, but there again, a lot of it has to do with tradition.
Good.
There seems to still be a lot of tradition in that, and we're talking public schools. We don't have governmental schools which are single-sex. We only have the public-private schools that are still single-sex. And it's an interesting question because these schools have been around for over 100 years, and they have been traditionally, people's grandparents went to the same school, and now their grandchildren are in the same school. So it's a tradition of passing it on to the family. So, but it's a very small percentage of the schooling system. I was brought up in a single-sex school, but I don't think it makes any difference really. I think it's something that is no big deal anymore. I think it really is a tradition, and I think co-ed schools are certainly far better because one gets a better perspective, if you know what I'm saying, than just a single-sex school.
Okay, well, it's a funny, it's a tricky, but Eton, we are talking about British system. Eton, it's a boys school and only for elite, so it's a tradition, probably most of all.
Absolutely 100% tradition. It's got nothing else to do with the fact that whether it happens in the next few years where they totally do away with same-sex schools, but just like Eton, in our country we have 1% of those schools which have been like that forever and ever. I have no idea why it's maintained like that, and I also probably can't tell you if it works. Maybe it works. Maybe it's a great system that nobody wants to change. But just as much as there are same boys' schools, there are same girls' schools. But it's such a minority that it doesn't seem to be a big issue right now here, certainly. I don't know about what the situation is in Russia.
Okay.
You don't have?
No, we didn't. Probably we had such kind of schools, but it was in Tsar time. It was before a revolution, and then in the USSR we didn't have such type of school, and probably the tiniest percent we have now, but I don't know statistics. It's very, 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 very few schools with single.
Exactly.
Okay, so.
And sorry, Alex, we still have an old tradition here, which is something that many parents believe is extremely old-fashioned, and also it's very costly, and that is the school uniform. Every school in our country still has a specific school uniform with the blazer, the hat, the badge on the collar, on the blazer and everything.
Great.
And this costs parents a lot of money every year in their budget. And it's something that the educational system needs to look at, because that really, for me, as far as I'm concerned, is a terribly old-fashioned thing that can be done away with. I really don't see the need to wear traditional school uniforms in this day and age. It's very strange and a waste of money, I think.
Okay, again some funny questions. I would like to quote Mark Twain, a great American writer, Mark Twain's words. I would like to quote, he said, "Never let school interfere with your education." Okay, Not only that writer said that. I can continue. Tolstoy, our writer,
Yes.
said something like that. Modern
Okay.
writers, Murakami, for example, Japanese writer, he says the
Yes.
same story. If you want some examples, probably I don't know biography of Mark Twain. Probably he was educated by himself, or I don't know. Tolstoy, he was expelled from university. Elon Musk,
Okay.
Elon Musk, your hero, your South African hero, he left university probably
Yes.
at the second year. And
Right.
the chain is unlimited. Probably Bill Gates and other.
I think Steve Jobs. and
Steve
people like
Jobs,
that.
the
Steve
same,
Jobs
the
is
same story.
Yeah.
But looking at this point from the other angle, you can say perhaps it's an exception. Perhaps it's an exception because they are geniuses or something like that. They are very talented, but maybe there is a seed of truth in it. What do you think? We have a
Yes.
lot of subject, we have a lot of story to tell our kids, but our education system is overloaded, and we don't give them really chance to express themselves. I would like to hear your opinion.
Absolutely, I fully agree with you. There isn't that amount of time. We don't have the. There isn't that kind of the volume, the sheer volume of self-education as well. You know, your life shouldn't, your education really shouldn't end as soon as you step out of your high school or your college or your senior school. Every day is a learning ability. Every day we learn something new. We're in a 21st century where everything is available to us. So it shouldn't be predicted and dictated to by educational institutions.
Nice.
We should wake up every morning and there will always be something for us to learn about, to be hungry to grasp. I never thought I'd teach online. A year ago, I was sitting in an office.
Okay.
I was a sales manager and for a multinational company.
Okay.
But I just thought, no, I want to do something else. So I had never taught online before. If you asked me a year ago, Christmas time, what would I be doing?
Good.
So it's been a fascinating journey for me as well.
Good.
And I mean, it can be for anyone from 70 to 17.
Okay.
It all depends on the individual. So no, it never stops. I don't think it ever stops.
Okay.
And it shouldn't be influenced either
Okay.
by the school only, like Mr. Twain said, or
Wonderful.
something like that.
Wonderful. And you said never stops, and probably we talked a lot, and it's endless talking. I have million of questions to you, but probably
Sure.
my last point, at my last statement, will be completely agreed. I would say that the idea of lifelong education is great, because you educate yourself, me.
Exactly.
We are on a journey of lifelong education, and we will continue with you.
Absolutely.
Go that way for a longer time.
You know, Alex, I saw a lovely quote the other day on one of the teacher forums online or something like that.
Good.
And it said, as the student learns, so does the teacher.
Oh yeah.
And that is actually a lovely quote. I can't remember who said it,
Okay.
but it's very appropriate.